This is Scotland's most famous loch, home of a legendary monster. And it turns out, he's not that hard to find. For 8 days, we are driving the NC500, an 800-kilometre ring road running around the epic sights of Scotland's north coast. So buckle up as we experience the highs and the lows of Scotland's Route 66. You join us at the start of day 8, our very last day on the road, and we found ourselves back on the shores of one of the most beautiful beaches in all of Scotland. Hello and welcome back to the NC500 Road Trip, 8 days on Scotland's Route 66. And today, you join us on the last day of the trip. We're driving from Dornoch down to Inverness to the end of the route, but don't worry, we've still got some very cool things planned for the day before we fly back to London. And seeing as it's another beautiful day today, we've come back down to Dornoch Beach, and if you watched yesterday's video, you'll see that it looks completely different. The tide's in, the beach is a lot shorter, and it is absolutely beautiful. We have been so lucky with the weather on this trip. Just look at the sky, look at the sea. It's so blue, which is not something you get every day in Scotland, believe me. Well, that is without a doubt one of the best beaches we've seen on the whole trip. It is stunning. Now it's time to get back on the road for what is basically the final stretch of the NC500 down towards Inverness. But if you've been watching this trip from the start, you'll know that there is a quintessential Scottish experience that we haven't yet done. And that is, of course, some Scotch whisky tasting and a distillery tour. And that's exactly what we're going to go and do now. We followed the road away from Dornoch and onto a peninsula known as the Black Isle. And seeing as this was our last day, we made sure to take full advantage of every roadside viewpoint we had left. Whisky production is a huge industry for Scotland and the UK as a whole, contributing around £5 billion to the economy every single year. And if you've been following this series, you'll know that I really wanted to visit the Talisker distillery on the Isle of Skye, but sadly, it was closed on the day we got there. So luckily, we had some extra time to stop here instead. Well, here we are at the Singleton Distillery at Glen Ord, and we've got a tour booked for midday, so let's get inside. You can already smell the whiskey in the air, all the malts. Delicious. The Glen Ord Distillery has been in operation since the early 1800s, even illegally for a spell when the founders went bankrupt and lost their licence. And really, it only stopped producing whiskey during the 2 world wars. These days, the brand is owned by the Diageo Group, who also own Guinness and some other distilleries like Talisker. Before the tour, there was a self-guided museum and gift shop, but then it was time to have a closer look around. Well, that was really interesting. One of the benefits of COVID here at the moment is that they're only doing 4-person tours, so it's a really small group, it's very intimate, and you get to ask as many questions as you want. So it's actually even better than the normal experience you get here, where it's a bigger group. And what I didn't realise about Singleton of Glen Ord specifically is that they actually ship all of their whiskey to Southeast Asia, so places like Singapore and Thailand, they buy out all of the bottles from this distillery, so you can't actually buy it anywhere in the UK. And yeah, it was just fascinating to hear about how the process has changed over the years. Obviously back in the day, this whole place would have hundreds of workers doing everything by hand, but these days, because of the massive demand, everything is automated, so everything's done by machines, and there's actually a very limited physical crew here. And of course, at the end, we've got to do a really nice tasting with 3 whiskies, and luckily for me, I've got a designated driver. Now that was £10 for the tour at the moment, and I think it's definitely worth doing. If you're doing the NC500, you have to do a distillery. It's something you just have to do, even if you don't like whiskey. It's still a really interesting experience. So we are back on the road again, and we're very close to Inverness now, but we are going to take a little detour to a place that you've probably heard of. It's the most famous loch in the world and home to a very elusive monster. So our next stop requires no introduction, but I suppose I'll give it one anyway. Loch Ness is a large freshwater lake named after the River Ness, which flows into it from the north. At its deepest point, it stretches down to 230 metres, containing more total water by volume than all of the lakes in Wales and England combined. Visibility in the water here is extremely low due to the high peat content in the surrounding soil, which might help to explain the many sightings of its most famous inhabitant. And over the years, there has been many reported sightings of a part dinosaur, part amphibian creature with a snake-like head, lurking in and around the dark waters of this famous loch. Well, here we are. We've just parked up at Loch Ness. Let's play a little game called Count the Nessies. On all the signs, statues, let's count them. And yeah, there is a lot of them. So many of them in all the shops that I actually lost count pretty quickly. And it turns out you can put Nessie on pretty much anything. Literally. We even followed the signs to a place called Nessie Land, which was a sort of indoor museum, but we only made it as far as the gift shop and the penny press.
Wow.
Show us the result, Emma. That is great. And afterwards, we stopped for some lunch at an appropriately themed cafe. Well, we've been to Nessie Land, we've eaten at the Nessie Deli, where I even ordered a Nessie beer, but I still haven't seen the bloody loch, so let's get over there now. And there's probably not many better spots to get your first view of Loch Ness than from a ruined castle like this, one that sits right on the shoreline. Well, we've just pulled up at Urquhart Castle, where we're going to get our first proper views of the lake. Should be good. Urquhart Castle is one of the most visited castles in Scotland, with around 500,000 visitors walking across the drawbridge every single year. It dates back to the 13th century, when it played an important role in the Scottish Wars of Independence. But since the 1770s, it's been in various states of ruin, still offering those incredible views over the water from all sorts of different angles. Well, you do get some amazing views over the loch from the castle, but unfortunately, no views of Nessie yet. It costs £9.60 for an adult ticket, and if this is your first castle or the only castle you're visiting up here in northern Scotland, then it probably is worth it, especially when you get those views over such a famous loch as well. But for us, when we've seen quite a lot of other ruined castles, most of which we didn't have to pay an entrance fee for, £9.60 seems like quite a lot of money. So it depends on what you're doing on your trip, but it is a lovely place, and I think those views of the loch are what you come here for. So Loch Ness was well worth a visit, but there was still one thing left to do, or should I say, one thing left to find. Nessie hunters, we will find it. You laughing at? This is serious. Another stop. Still no sighting. And then, something very strange happened. Oh my god. Oh my god, pull over, pull over! The wet paint sign sort of ruins the magic, doesn't it? Smaller than I thought. If you do want to find a Nessie like this for yourself, you can find plenty of life-size models down at Nessieland, and this one was at the Clansman Harbour, where you can also find one of the biggest souvenir shops at Loch Ness. Well, it's finally time to bring this trip to a close. Just by following this road along the edge of Loch Ness will take us back into Inverness, which marks the end of the NC500, which means we've completed the whole loop, all 500 miles. And it also means we have to go back to the airport and drop off this old beast, our little Vauxhall Corsa, which has taken us around the whole loop, and it's been a very faithful steed. So come on, let's do it. The last little bit. It actually feels like ages since we've been in Inverness. It was only 8 days ago, but it feels like much, much longer. And I think it's because of everything we've done and seen over the last few days. It's just all the different landscapes, makes it feel like we've travelled even further. It's a strange feeling. Hey, there it is. Inverness Castle, where we started the trip. We did it. Nice. From Inverness Castle, around the north coast of Scotland and back to Inverness Castle. Journey complete. See you, mate. We made it back to the airport with the Hertz gold standard cleaning sticker still on the car. It's not gold standard anymore.